The village of Kurokami was once a place of peace, a serene haven where time seemed to stand still. Nestled among whispering bamboo groves and emerald rice paddies, it existed in harmony with nature. The villagers lived simple lives, tending to their fields and cherishing the beauty that surrounded them. But this tranquility was shattered by a cruel warlord whose greed and ambition knew no bounds. His army descended upon Kurokami like a plague, bringing destruction and despair. He demanded a young maiden as sacrifice to appease his twisted sense of power. Her name was Yumiko, a beacon of hope and kindness in the village. She was known for her kindness and her gentle spirit. Yumiko accepted her fate with a heavy heart, believing that her sacrifice would save her people from further suffering. She believed her sacrifice would save her people. With unwavering determination, she prepared herself for the ultimate act of selflessness. She walked to the heart of the forest, her steps guided by an unspoken resolve. The path was long and arduous, but Yumiko's spirit remained unbroken. There an ancient shrine stood silent, a relic of forgotten times. The air was thick with an eerie stillness, as if the forest itself mourned the impending loss. The villagers watched, their hearts heavy with grief and helplessness. They could do nothing but pray for Yumiko's safety and the salvation of their village. Yumiko was bound to a stone altar, her wrists and ankles secured with rough ropes. The cold stone pressed against her skin, a stark contrast to the warmth of her spirit. Her last breath was a prayer for her people, a silent plea for their protection and peace. She closed her eyes, finding solace in the thought that her sacrifice would not be in vain. But the warlord's cruelty knew no bounds. His heart was as cold as the steel he wielded, and he reveled in the suffering of others. He betrayed the village, attacking despite the sacrifice. The villagers were slaughtered, their screams echoing through the once peaceful valley. Their blood soaked the sacred ground, mingling with the tears of the forest. The land that had once been a sanctuary was now a graveyard. Yumiko's sacrifice was in vain. Her noble act, meant to save her people, had only led to more suffering and death. Her rage and sorrow echoed through the ages, a haunting reminder of the village's tragic fate. The forest, once a place of life and beauty, became a realm of shadows and whispers. The shrine became a place of darkness, forever cursed by the bloodshed and betrayal. It stood as a monument to the village's lost innocence and the cruelty of the warlord. Years turned into decades, then centuries. The forest grew and changed, but the curse remained, a dark stain on the land. The story of Yumiko became a whispered legend passed down through generations. Yet the curse remained, a silent threat lurking in the shadows. It waited for the day it would be unleashed once more, a dark force ready to reclaim its power and exact its vengeance on the world. A weathered sign marked the entrance to Kurokami village. The sign, though old and rustic, held a certain charm that hinted at the village's rich history and the secrets it might hold. The kanji characters were faded, almost as if time itself was trying to erase the village from memory. Yet the stories and legends of Kurokami persisted, whispered among those who dared to listen. Hiroshi, a history student with a thirst for the unknown, adjusted his backpack. He had read countless tales about Kurokami, each more intriguing than the last. His curiosity was a flame that no amount of skepticism could extinguish. He was skeptical but intrigued by the stories surrounding the village. The tales of spirits, curses, and ancient rituals were too compelling to ignore. He had to see it for himself. Beside him, his girlfriend Aiko radiated excitement. Her eyes sparkled with the thrill of adventure, and her smile was infectious. She had always been the more adventurous of the two, always seeking the next mystery to unravel. Her adventurous spirit thrived on such mysteries. The unknown was not something to be feared, but something to be explored and understood. She believed that every legend had a kernel of truth waiting to be discovered. They were joined by Kenji, a burly photographer, and Mayumi, a quiet folklore enthusiast. Kenji's camera was always at the ready, capturing every moment, while Mayumi's knowledge of local legends provided invaluable context. The villagers greeted them with wary eyes. Their smiles were strained, as if they were hiding something. It was clear that outsiders were not a common sight in Kurokami, and their presence was met with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. Old man Tanaka, the village elder, met them at the inn. His weathered face and wise eyes spoke of a lifetime spent in Kurokami. He was the keeper of the village's secrets, and his presence commanded respect. His voice, a low rasp, spoke of forgotten tragedies. He recounted tales of lost travelers and ancient curses, his words heavy with the weight of history. The air seemed to grow colder as he spoke, the shadows lengthening around them.
"The shrine is forbidden," he warned, his gaze heavy on Aiko. His eyes bore into hers as if trying to convey the gravity of his words. The shrine was not just a place, it was a boundary between the known and the unknown. Many have ventured there, but few have returned. The path to the shrine was overgrown and eerie, a testament to the dangers that lay ahead. It was a place where the veil between worlds was thin, and the spirits roamed freely.
"What happened to those who didn't return?" she asked, her eyes bright with curiosity. The question hung in the air, a challenge to the silence that followed. She was determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost.
Kenji shifted uncomfortably. The weight of the elder's words seemed to press down on him, and he couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled in his gut. Mayumi remained silent, her gaze fixed on the floor. She had heard similar stories in her research, but hearing them from someone who had lived through them was different. It made the legends feel all too real. Hiroshi, sensing his girlfriend's determination, sighed. He knew there was no stopping her once she set her mind to something. He could only hope that their curiosity wouldn't lead them into danger. The curse might be a myth, he reasoned, but the villagers' fear was real. Their expressions of fear and caution were not something that could be easily dismissed. It was a palpable reminder that some legends were born from truth. The forest pressed in around them. Sunlight struggled to penetrate the dense canopy. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. Hiroshi led the way, his hand brushing against Aiko's. He felt a chill despite the humidity. Kenji swore under his breath as his foot caught on a gnarled root. He cursed the lack of proper trails. Mayumi, pale and silent, clutched her notebook. She had filled it with local legends, each one more unsettling than the last. Aiko, her eyes sharp, noticed something glinting in the undergrowth. It was a tarnished silver dagger, its blade dulled with age. The air around it felt colder, heavier.
"Hiroshi, look," she whispered, her voice hushed.
She pointed to the dagger, a shiver running down her spine. A sense of dread settled over the group. The forest seemed to hold its breath, watching them. The dagger was a grim reminder of the darkness that lay ahead. The shrine emerged from the trees, its ancient structure barely visible through the dense foliage. It seemed almost as if the forest itself was trying to reclaim it, to hide it away from prying eyes. It was a dilapidated structure, its once ornate carvings now eroded by time and weather. The intricate designs that once told stories of gods and spirits were now mere shadows of their former selves, worn down by centuries of neglect. The air crackled with an unseen energy, a palpable tension that seemed to hum just beneath the surface. It was as if the very atmosphere was charged with the memories of the past, with the echoes of long-forgotten rituals and prayers. Silence hung heavy, broken only by the rustling of leaves. Each sound seemed amplified, each movement a reminder of the stillness that enveloped the place. It was a silence that spoke volumes, a silence that seemed to hold secrets.
I felt a tremor of unease, a shiver that ran down my spine. The stories we had heard, the warnings we had dismissed, suddenly felt very real. It was as if the spirits of the place were watching us, judging us. The stories, the warnings, suddenly felt very real. We had laughed them off, but now, standing here, they seemed to take on a new weight, a new significance. The fear in our eyes was unmistakable.
"This place, it feels wrong." The words slipped out before I could stop them, a reflection of the dread that had settled in my chest. It was a feeling that was hard to shake, a sense that we were intruding on something sacred.
Kenji, his camera forgotten, muttered those words. He was usually so composed, so rational, but even he couldn't deny the strange energy that seemed to permeate the air. It was as if the place itself was alive, aware of our presence. Mayumi, her face pale, nodded in agreement. She had always been sensitive to such things, and now her fear was palpable. She clutched her notebook tighter, as if it could offer some protection against the unseen forces around us. She clutched her notebook tighter, her knuckles white. The pages were filled with notes and sketches, a record of our journey, but now they seemed insignificant in the face of the overwhelming presence that surrounded us.
I felt a strange pull, a sense of sorrow and anger, so palpable it was suffocating. It was as if the very ground beneath my feet was trying to communicate, to share its pain and its rage. The emotions were overwhelming, almost too much to bear.
Aiko, however, was drawn to the shrine. She moved as if in a trance, her eyes fixed on the ancient structure. There was a determination in her step, a resolve that seemed to defy the fear that gripped the rest of us. As she stepped closer, the air grew colder. Each breath she took was visible in the chill, a stark contrast to the warmth of the day. It was as if the shrine itself was exuding a coldness, a warning to stay away. A faint, mournful wail echoed through the silence. It was a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, a cry that spoke of loss and longing. It sent a shiver through all of us, a reminder of the stories we had heard.
Did you hear that? The question hung in the air, a reflection of the fear that had taken hold. We all strained to listen, to make sense of the eerie sound that had pierced the silence.
Aiko whispered, her eyes wide. She had always been the brave one, the one who led the way, but now even she seemed shaken. The fear in her eyes was a mirror of our own, a reflection of the dread that had settled over us. Hiroshi, his skepticism shaken, put a comforting arm around her. He had always been the rational one, the one who dismissed the stories as mere superstition, but now even he couldn't deny the strange energy that surrounded us. The wail, he realized, wasn't the wind. It was a sound that seemed to come from deep within the forest, a cry that spoke of ancient pain and sorrow. It was a sound that seemed to echo through the very soul of the place. It was the sound of something ancient and filled with pain, a cry that spoke of loss and longing, of a curse that had lingered for centuries. It was a sound that seemed to pierce the very fabric of reality, a reminder of the power of the past. The curse of Kurokami was no myth. It was very real, a reminder that the past is never truly gone, that the spirits of the place still linger, watching, waiting. It was a realization that sent a shiver through all of us, a reminder of the power of the unseen. Night fell, cloaking the shrine in an oppressive darkness. The moon, a crimson smudge in the sky, cast long, distorted shadows.
Huddled with Aiko, our backs were against a moss-covered stone.
Kenji, his face pale, clutched his camera as if it were a lifeline. Mayumi, her eyes squeezed shut, recited protective chants under her breath. A cold wind howled through the trees, whipping their hair and clothes. The temperature plummeted, then they saw her. A figure emerged from the heart of the shrine. She was ethereal, her form shifting like smoke. Her long black hair flowed around her like a shroud, her eyes burning with a cold fire fixed on them. The spectral maiden raised her hand and the wind seemed to shriek in response. Her voice, a mournful whisper, echoed around them.
You defile this sacred ground, you will pay for the sins of the past.
Terror, cold and primal, gripped their hearts. The curse had been awakened.